Good morning. Welcome to Tip Off. Glad to have you aboard. Thanks very much for tuning in. For those of you on YouTube, that picture is way too close to me, but I was just checking everything to make sure it's all right. I'll lean back now a little bit and talk to you guys. Welcome to the hotel room in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Had a wonderful dinner last night with Steve Miller, who went out to a really fabulous, pricey but fabulous steakhouse here in town called Manny's. If you're ever around. We had a nice time. I'll tell you what, I bike a lot. I'm not into cycling per se. What they are doing with Tour of Utah, that was really fascinating to hear. Basically, to just, without boring you, there's all these different levels. They've jumped up a bunch of levels, and there's only 4 races in the United States of America, really only 3, Tour of California, Tour of Colorado, Tour of Utah, and then a new one now out in Chicago that are at the level that Tour of Utah has. And Tour of Utah this year is going to be inviting, they've jumped up a level last year, and so they're back there this year. They can invite 8 teams that are from the top of the top. So Radio Shack or, some of those well-known teams. One of the teams is run by a guy who managed teams who've won 9 Tour de France's. It's coming. So they've really turned this into a big-time event. It was really cool to see Steve's passion and excitement toward the tour and what it's doing and just how what they're able to show that it does for the state. Anytime we get exposure in our state, it's a big deal. That's where the Utah Pac-12 thing, I think, is just such an enormous thing for our state long run. We just need exposure still. I don't know how many of you are aware of that. But anybody who travels outside of our state, I think would be probably is aware that we still need a good deal of exposure, and need some more opportunity for people to see that what we have geographically as well as culturally and some other things it's pretty special. All right, so that was really cool. Just thought I'd share that. A lot of all-star buzz. Derek Favors is going. I talked with him yesterday when we arrived. He was pretty excited about it. I mean, in a Favors way, no more than probably 5 or 6 words at a time. But there was a smile, and he was going down there anyway. And so he's just going to stay a little longer, then go to Atlanta and see some family before we head to play Sacramento. We play tonight, and then we open against Sacramento. Tonight's always an interesting game, by the way, because night before All-Star game, traditionally, the home team is really distracted. There's an advantage to being on the road the night before All-Star game, but you're going to see a lot of duds put on the board here in the next. I don't know if teams play Thursday, but if teams play Thursday, we don't. But if the other teams do, tonight and tomorrow, you'll see a lot of duds. Sacramento played Miami last night. They play Washington tonight. Those guys are ready. Everybody's ready to go. Sacramento, Washington, how's that for tonight? Woo, that's an exciting one. Sorry. I was just looking at that because Jimmer didn't play again last night, and I was trying to see what happened. And Isaiah Thomas got 35 minutes. He has just taken that job from Jimmer. Jimmer's also, I think, I was looking at it, Jimmer's like 2 of his last 13 or something shooting from 3, so that little hot streak he had kind of wore off. It's hard, though. Let's talk about that for a second, just because I think this relates to Burks, and I think this relates to Hayward, and I think this relates to Jimmer, and chances are you care about all 3 of them. You know what the biggest thing is? Let's go back. I did a huge analysis. I did 2 projects that I really liked yesterday. That if you could check them out on Locked On Jazz, I'd love it. I mean, Locked On Jazz, guys, I think most of you realize, really is built to give you just some access and insight that you can't get. Just from my insider position, giving you the insight and then letting you have access that's unequaled by any other team. And 2 of the projects yesterday, one was I watched the final 5 minutes of the Spurs game and broke down synergy to see what we did. And what jumped out at me was we really executed quite well for the most part. There were some areas where we didn't do things right, but I thought that was a good sign. We're playing the game right. The first thing is you play the game hard. The second thing is you play the game right. Those 2 things are still happening, and that's encouraging. And I thought Tyrone really coached a pretty good game in the final 5 minutes where, He's working Jefferson in the post. Okay, the Spurs going to take that away with the double teams, and this is where Millsap's lack of height and some things. Millsap had a really poor final stretch. Let's not beat around the bush. Disappointing. First, when they double team Jefferson, Paul's 6'7", 6'8". He's not big enough, so he can't get visible. And with Duncan's reach, it's hard to get him the ball. Favors probably can get a little bit more visible at that point. He can't do some of the things, but on what he can't do, Paul on the other end doesn't beat Matt Bonner. One time they try to go to the post, he goes one-on-one, he doesn't beat Matt Bonner. The next time they try to front Paul, he's not tall enough, so you can't get the ball over the top of the front. And I'm not sure you could front a 6'11" Favors. So that was tough. And then I also broke down the last defensive assignment on how Jefferson got the three, and frankly, Paul blows it. Paul just runs the wrong defense. If you go look at Locked on Jazz, and maybe if you're on YouTube or listening just on the web, you can go to it right now, and there's a screenshot of the high pick and roll. Devin Harris jumps the correct shoulder, plays it perfectly. Paul Millsap doesn't play it right. He goes to the wrong side of Tim Duncan, and Tony Parker gets an open lane to the basket. And we're killing our point guards because our point guards can't guard anyone, but that's a pretty good example of where that was not a point guard's fault. So, anyway, the point of that was not to rip Paul. I'm kind of on a stream of conscious today. It was more that in those final 5 minutes, Gordon Hayward doesn't touch the ball. Now, I think Gordon Hayward should touch the ball, and I think he's one of our few playmakers. And so there's probably some questions. And there were definitely some times where the ball hit Josh Howard and stuck and didn't move to Gordon Hayward. And Gordon's inability to hit a three right now is hurting him in some regard. If he was burying the three, I think his guys would move the ball to him. There were two circumstances where he would have had the three-point look, and he's just not hitting it right now, so he didn't get it. But with that said, think about that. Gordon Hayward at Butler touched the ball on every possession. He went 5 minutes without a touch. I was talking to Ben Bagley about this, and you can catch Ben, Tony Parks, 1 to 3 every day on 1320K Fan. And when I was talking to Bags about it, he said that he went through a game where he opened the other night after one of his big nights and went about 5 minutes without a touch. Well, okay, so a lot of us are wondering why there's more consistency and why Gordon can't get going more. And well, that's why. And then in regards to Burks' development, and then I think this relates to Jimmer as well. These guys had the ball in their hands every single possession in college. And I don't know how a guy learns how to play without the ball. And to some extent, I almost wonder if this is where maybe you do have to just play Burks. Well, and frankly, until Josh and CJ play better, you probably should just play Burks. And you got to get those guys going. And Ty is just still trying. He has no other choice, so he just keeps trying and trying and trying. But I wonder if the only way Burks does learn how to play without the ball is to play 30 minutes and so that he's not stressed out when he doesn't have the ball the same way. I'm going to go over early and talk to these guys about this and try to figure out what that answer is and how these guys have to do that. Because to me, that's what jumps out, is that suddenly you're asking guys who are used to playing with the ball every single play. Gordon goes 5 minutes. Well, boy, sometimes he seems like he's kind of lost in the flow of the game. That's not on him. He played those possessions correctly. He was in the right spot. He did what he was supposed to do, and he never sees it. That's pretty eye-opening. And pretty interesting to me to see that's where you end up at some point. So keep an eye on that. I think that's one of the bigger struggles for rookies that we probably don't talk about a great deal. What else about us? Let me venture into one other just conversation that we had. The plane was filled with a bunch of employee of excellence people yesterday, so we usually have our own kind of, I sit actually on the plane backwards. Where I sit on the plane, there's a table. Jonathan Reinhardt or Derek or Hannah, whoever the PR person usually sits, it's first class style seats around a table, and I sit backwards, and they usually sit on the other side. And then And there's another table over there. It's where all the food's at when we get on the plane. And there's another table over there, and one of the TV production guys sits there with Ron Boone over on that corner. It's usually the four of us right in that stretch. Well, there were a bunch of people on the plane yesterday, which is fine. Cool they get this experience. Um, and we all combined. So Harpering, Bowler, Hannah, was a PR person, and myself. And so there was just a lot of chitter chat and conversation going on about the team. And I think Harpering and I both put on headphones at one point because we couldn't get either of the other to shut up. Both directions. We both were just like the whole time with various things. And I was doing all my research and this and that. Oh, you got to see this, though, this piece of research. And Matt's like, oh, shut up. And well, we gotta go. What do you think about getting Andre Miller? And what do you think about getting this guy? And the name I threw out, though, by the way, in our if you're wondering if we ever do this too, yes, we do the mysterious trade rumors. We don't actually go take Bleacher reports or crazy stuff about Boston making insane trades and then tweet everybody about it. Yes, that's driving me nuts, and Scotty nuts, and Ben nuts. But Rodney Stuckey's a name I'd look at. I watched him last night to see how he's playing, and he's not really a true one, so it would have to be one of those circumstances where you suddenly kind of create this Burks, Stuckey, Hayward combination. They signed him a 3-year, $25 million deal. I don't know if they're willing to move him, but that's becoming Brandon Knight's team. They don't have any. It would have to be a Stuckey Millsap deal. They don't, you're trading a big for a small. They don't have any power forward on that team. Tayshaun Prince and Jason Maxiel are their front court starters. So there might be some sort of match there. And you just have to decide whether you really like Stuckey. I like him. I think he fills a lot of our needs. He goes to the free throw line. He's not a true one, but he goes to the line a lot. He's pretty big and strong. He's had some checkered past issues, but we got to figure it out. And Brandon Knight's playing great, so that's a funny situation for him. They have Ben Gordon under a big contract. They probably got to get going again. That Irving-Knight game, that's becoming quite a rivalry. Irving and Knight last night. Kyrie Irving had 25 points, 5 rebounds, and 8 assists, and Brandon Knight had 24 points, 5 rebounds, and 3 assists. There was a great question when Brandon Knight came out whether he was a point guard or not. I think there's still some question whether he's a distributing point guard, but the dude can just play. I loved him. I had him floating between, Kyrie was one, and then I had Knight and Cantor as my 2-3. I loved him. I had Knight at 2 and Cantor at 3, and then I'd talk to people, and they'd tell me, you can't forget how important bigs are, and I'd flip-flop them, and then I'd flip-flop them back when I watched Knight. I had a love affair with Brandon Knight. I think I talked to a scout who'd tell me that, he really can't play the point, and you're missing that, and I'd flip him back. And I love Knight. So, I don't know who was the right pick there for the Jazz. I don't think there's any question. You're pretty pleased with what you're getting out of Cantor. And Detroit's pleased that Knight slipped. Boy, he's a good player. He can put it in the hoop. So impressed by him. I was going somewhere with that conversation. Rodney Stuckey was our conversation. So, but the other question that we had in regards to this, and Paul's playing so hard and so much the core of the team and busting. But on the other end, in the month of February, he's getting 30 minutes a night. He's got 14 points, 9 rebounds a game, and playing 31 minutes. I hate to say it, but that's not a productivity level that's unique to Paul. I mean, to some extent, I got to phrase this correctly because it's going to come out wrong. But just almost 30 minutes on this roster without a lot of other outside scoring, your power forward's going to get you 14 and 9 if he plays hard every night. At some point you got to be exceeding what you just get for minutes on the floor. And the 40% shooting, now hurts the team. I always bang on Jefferson about that, but and so quite honestly, what I'm just saying is I think if Favors played 30 minutes a night, I think he'd be getting 14 and 9. And if Cantor was playing 30 minutes a night, if he didn't gasp for air, though he's in much better shape than he used to be and didn't get in foul trouble, I think he'd be getting 11 and 14. So that productivity level out of Paul's got to pick up. And then let me finish with this and then I got to go Skype with the kids. We talked about Faves yesterday, and I do want more out of him, and I do want him to step up. It's interesting we're suddenly focusing with all these other issues going on, and frankly, so many other things that suddenly the last 2 days the focus has been Favors and Millsap. But back to the kind of where we talked about Hayward and Burks, I do want Favors to step up, but talking to Matt and talking to some other guys who I'll leave nameless, the idea that you're asking him to step up in the minutes he's getting right now is a really tough ask. That you're asking a 20-year-old who does not have a refined game to be able to use very few opportunities to be able to show himself on the floor is is a much tougher ask than we realize. So those are my thoughts. That's the tip off today. Did I forget anything on my list? How about the Spurs last night? Dumping that one. I wonder what's your feeling as a Jazz fan? You get pissed that the night after they decide that that's the game they don't want to play. It's funny they clearly chose that they could win in Utah and they couldn't win in Portland, and dumped that game last night. Would you be pissed if you paid tickets for that and you saw that, or you just want to see the Jazz win? Are you pissed as a Jazz fan that you got the loss when Portland just got a gimme win? They didn't play Duncan or Parker last night. If you missed that, all right, have a good one. I don't know if we're going to do a vocal today. There's a great podcast up with Chuck Cooperstein, so make sure you listen to that. And I will be putting together today the Hometown Hero podcast, I believe. And we may tape with PKI as well. Talk to you soon. Bye, YouTubers.